For today, we are talking about these two things, and they look identical pretty much, except one of them says y equals. Let me make sure you get the difference. Did you know that there's such a thing as an expression? I know you know there's equations. You've had equations for a long time. But an equation and an expression are different because one of them is equal and one of them isn't. Look close. Do you get this one has a y equals and this one doesn't? So the only thing you can do with that is multiply it out. That's all you can do with it. That's all I'd ever ask you to do with it, is to multiply it out. Whereas this, you don't want to multiply it out. Okay, let me show you why. Multiplying this out just means you're going to go like distribute. Imagine that this x wasn't there. Do you get that this would just get distributed in? You've done that since like day one. It just distribute. You've seen that before, right? But if there's two parts to it, then you just distribute both parts. X times x is x squared. X times 3 is 3x. You just multiply it all out. This one, you don't do that because, pay attention, this is a big difference. On this one, you want to find the x-intercepts. And so, y has to equal 0. I'm going to say that again. If you want the x-intercept, y will be 0. I'll show you that on a graph. This is an x-intercept. It's a dot on the x-axis. And this would be the dot like 3, 0. Notice the y is 0. For any x-intercept, the y is 0. So look, I put a 0 where the y was. Then, once I have a 0 where the y is, do you get it's an equation that's all set equal to 0? So then, you just asked, what are the things that make it work? Would you agree if you put in a 2, this part would become 0? So 2 is one of your answers. What would be this thing that makes this side 0? Say it if you know it. Come on. What would make this 0? -3, thank you. If you put in -3 there, -3 plus 3 makes 0, right? So the two answers for this are x equals 2 for this one. And for this one, it's x equals -3. Those are the things that make the equation 0. Those are the x-intercepts. All right, please go off to the side and write this. Y equals x plus 4, x minus 4. Just copy that down. I'll help you. You copy that down. Copy that down first. I know, but I still want you to copy that down, and then I will help you. Just copy down the problem. Everybody's doing that right now. And I will help you with the other question as soon as you don't copy it down. So you got a question about this one? I got them both on the screen. Do you have a question about this one? What did you have a question about? Oh, my charger is already being used, so I'm out. If you want to borrow a wall charger, got one of those. You'd have to like leave your iPad there, do notes on paper. I'm fine with that if you want. I won't. Your knife choice. Okay, so this one. Could you multiply it out? You could, but you wouldn't want to. This would be a dumb kind to multiply out because you really want it this way, so you can tell that -4 is one of the answers. One of the answers to what? You set y equal to 0 to find the x-intercepts, which is what you're, like you learned yesterday. All I did yesterday, it was so easy. It was like, what are the x-intercepts? Those things. Those two spots are the x-intercepts. But now what you're doing is finding the x-intercepts from an equation. And that's what makes the equation
equal 0. So you set it equal to 0, and then you go -4 would work, and 4 would work. Do you get that part equal 0 now? And that part equals 0 now? And so there's two ways to make it equal 0. So if I actually looked at the graph, +4 here would be one of my x-intercepts, and -4 would be the other one. All right, please write this one down. Y equals x minus 7, x plus 1. Copy that down. It's a Friday. If you could focus for 20 more minutes, you get done with math. Stay with me. Zane, what are we going to set equal to 0? Nope. 7 is one of the answers, but the question was, what do we set equal to 0? The y. So this y here is going to be 0. And then to make the whole thing equal 0, x could be 7. What's the other answer? X could be -1. Are you getting this? All right. See, multiplying this out, doing that FOIL thing, it's a thing, but it doesn't help on this kind of problem. All right. If I had just multiplied this out, I wouldn't have got those answers. I would have just gotten what's called standard form. Now, don't get me wrong. This is important, and it happens all the time. You're going to have this on your test, probably on your next test. I bet you at least 4 times you'll have to multiply one of these things out. And now some of you like FOIL. First, outside, inside, last. I personally am going to de-emphasize doing it that way because I think it's just as easy to just distribute and go, if this had just had a -7 in front of it, you would have just multiplied it like that and like that. We've done it like 8 million times. And you'd have -7x minus 7. And then there's this part. It also has to get distributed out. And now be strategic about where you put it. X times x is x squared. It's not 2x, it's x squared. Put it in the front because the x squareds are always in the front. And the last one is this x times this 1, which is 1x. Now, I personally think it's smart to put plus 1x right here. You could put it here if you really want, but if I put it right next to this -7, then it reminds me that I got to put these guys together because those are like terms. Final answer, x squared for this, minus 6x minus 7. That multiplied out to that. This was in what's called factored form, and this one is called standard form. That is huge. I'm telling you. Just like on the last test, I warned you ahead of time, you're going to have to graph like a million things. And you did. On the test, there was like 8 graphs. If you didn't learn how to graph and find points, you just failed that test. And then you'll have to take it over again. On this next test, multiplying out like this is happening. It's like the base of everything. All right, so let's go to page 2 of the notes. This is just reminding you what the firsts are. These are the firsts. These are the outer. And these are the inner. And these are the lasts. But I don't think that's the best way to do it. I think the best way is to just multiply them out with distribute. When they are all multiplied out, they look like that. And this is just reminding you, I know I've moved to like 3rd page or something like that, and that's okay. Get to this page. If you were going to type your answers into Schoology for today and you just multiply the problem all the way out, then there's a number here that you're not even seeing, and it's a 1. I hope you know by now. If there's no number there in front of an x, you could call it a 1. there's a -2 here, and there's a 9 here. And so those are the numbers you would put 1 here, -2 there, and 9 last. Oh, don't forget to use plus or minus. Okay. +1 and +9. Okay. Would you just make sure you understood that by going, okay, this is first, so this goes here. But wait, there's no X on this one. If there's no X on this one, I'm going to move this -10 over, like over here. Then if there's no X, you could say that there's a 0x. Now I got all three numbers. There's my A, there's my B, and there's my C number. They go here and here and here. So if there's a term missing, you can just say that there was a 0 in the front of it. So my three numbers were -3 for the first, 0 for the second thing because there was nothing there. And the number, that's just a number without an X on it, it's called a constant, that goes here. Okay, then I want to get to this page. Everybody find this seafoam blue page. In a moment, I'm going to ask you to turn it my way because I think some of you have gotten lost. Show me that you're on the blue page, please. All right. Slide it over. I can't see through the shoulder. Thank you. All right, good. Then, would you please multiply this one out? I personally would start with this X, and I would multiply it by both things. And then I would do this -1 by both things. I'm going to pause for a second while you multiply that all out and add it all up. Add up the like terms. So I know most of you started right with your X times your X here, making an X squared. And then the X times the 5, making a 5X. And then this part, -1X. And then this part, -5. Combine like terms and you have X squared, and this makes 4X -5. I need to know. How many of you had that perfect? Raise your hand if you had that perfect. Okay, good. Glad to see almost everybody knew how to do that. All right. This next one is just a distribute. There's no FOIL on this kind. There's no such thing as a first, outside, inside, last. There's only two parts. So you just distribute. Now some people get confused on this because they're like, well, what do I do with the numbers? You just multiply them. The whole point is multiply. So that's -8. And X times X is X squared. The second one there, -2X times 1 is -2X. And that's it. It doesn't have a number at the end. And that's okay. It's just got two parts. I cannot add them together because they're not like terms. All right. And this one. This is kind of your bread and butter. Just simple, easy, normal. Those two get multiplied. These two get multiplied. Gotta make sure you got this. I'm going to pause and walk around and see those answers. So I'll do it with green here. 3x times x, 3x squared. That's not showing up real well. 3x squared. 3x times the -2 makes -6x. 4 times the x is plus 4x. And then 4 times the -2 is -8. These two are alike because they both have x's. 3x squared minus 2x minus 8. And if you were entering this on Schoology, that would have been the first number, that's the second number, and that's the third number you'd type in. That's how we have you type them in. You just have to fill in this blank, and this blank. All right, cool. So there's two kinds of questions today. It's can you multiply them out like we just did right there, like that. And the other kind of question is, what if they want the x-intercepts? You set y, which is what f of x is, equal to 0, and you do it completely different. You don't multiply them out. If I just wanted the x-intercepts for this, I would set y equal to 0, and then I'd figure out what makes this part 0. That's really easy. Do you get that 2 makes it equal to 0? Then that's one of your x-intercepts is 2. And this part's harder. Then you'd write 3x plus 4 needs to equal 0. And then you got a two-step equation. I said there was going to be like 8 million two-step equations in this class. And here's another one. You set this equal to 0. And then you solve it. -4/3. Those should be easy for you if you take a second and set them up like this. Set them up equal to 0. So I got two answers. 2 for one of them, -4/3 for the other one. Okay. That's the last major topic. This is just, sometimes you can have one answer for a quadratic. Sometimes you don't have any answers for a quadratic because it doesn't touch the x-intercept. You don't have to have two x-intercepts. See, normally they do. Normally they touch twice and you get two x-intercepts. But sometimes they don't touch at all, like that one. It's not touching the key spot, which is the x-axis. It has no x-intercepts. And this one touches once. So you can have one x-intercept or two x-intercepts or no x-intercepts. All right. So if they wanted the x-intercepts, you just figure out what makes this 0. X equals -3. What makes this 0? X equals -2. Super easy if you know what you're doing. What makes this part 0? -5. What makes this part 0? -3. Then those are the two x-intercepts. Because they set the y equal to 0. See? All right. You have a Schoology quiz. And I want to remind you, if you're writing an x-intercept, you have to write it like this. Remember, x-intercepts have y equal to 0? So if your x-intercept is like 2, you got to write it like that. That's how you write x-intercepts. So if you know the answer is 2, you got to write it 2, 0. Because look, if I really want it to be 2, it's right there. That spot is 2, 0. Okay, you made it to the end. And if you paid good attention, this is going to be an easy one for you. If you need help, please walk up and ask. I'm going to hand back those tests, and that's all I got for you for today.